All right. Hey, welcome to another episode of Coach P's Perspective. Man, I'm pumped. Today I have Richard Arreola on here, who is a phenomenal jiu-jitsu practitioner. He is a business owner, entrepreneur, has just an exceptional grappling background, and some of his accomplishments. He's a Masters world champion, no-gi world champion a couple times, 3-time Pan Am world champion, 5-time American national champion, has a plethora of accomplishments in grappling in the sport of jiu-jitsu, but is much more than that as a human being. We're going to get into it in a minute. So Richard, man, thank you for being on.
Oh, Coach P, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, brother. I'm excited to be here.
All right. Well, hey, let's do this for our listeners. Tell me, where'd you grow up? And also, we were talking off camera a little bit, but you have a brother who's also a very good athlete and a grappler. But tell me, where did you grow up and how did you get into combat sports?
Well, I grew up in Southern California my whole life. I was born in the city of Orange, but I lived, I would say, a good portion of my life in Santa Ana and Fullerton, which is located in Orange County by Disneyland. When I was a kid, I grew up a huge basketball fan. I loved, watching the Chicago Bulls. I grew up, just a huge football, but basketball was my favorite. I played a lot in the Boys and Girls Club leagues and whatnot, and street ball. I had these big aspirations, unrealistic aspirations of becoming a basketball player when I got into high school. Sadly, to my realization, when I actually tried out for the basketball team, I went to Fullerton High School, by the way. And when I tried out for the basketball team, I got cut the first day. And I remember the coach's exact words. Sorry, buddy, you're just, you're a little too short and I can't really use you. So, yeah, so that was a bit of a harsh reality right there, and that just crushed my whole basketball dreams. And so I remember that day pretty significantly. I left the gym. I sat outside of the gym, and I was really bummed out. But then my buddy mentioned before that he was doing wrestling, and he just walked beside me and said, "Hey, why don't you just try out for the wrestling team? You got nothing else to do. You're not playing basketball this year. Why don't you go for it?" And I didn't really like the idea of, I didn't know anything about wrestling. All I knew was WWF wrestling, and which I'm a huge fan of. So I thought to myself, okay, well, I get to jump off some ropes and things like that. He's like, no, it's not that kind of wrestling. It's more like Olympic style, amateur style wrestling. So I thought to myself, well, I was already just too overwhelmed with the disappointment that I wasn't going to, be the next, Jason Kidd. So I was pretty bummed out. So I told him no, I declined. But he was very adamant. He kept, pushing me and kept motivating me to come out for the team. His name is Chris, by the way, Christian Castaneda. Shout out to Chris, man. Appreciate you, man. And one day he played a really bad joke on me. He said, "Hey, look, we're gonna go out and get some pizza. Let's do something. Or I think we're gonna go hang out or something." He said, "Come pick me up at the wrestling room." So I said, "Okay, fine." So I walked up to the wrestling room, opened the door, and when I walked in the wrestling room, I saw just a bunch of guys just rolling around, sweaty, very muggy. So I was already hot, the moment I got in there. And sure enough, one of my buddies, put his arm around me and said, "Hey, Richard, good to see you, man." And then I didn't know they had this ritual. And he pretty much pushed me in the center of the mat and yelled, "Non-wrestler." And then everyone just came and dogpiled me. And yeah, so that was my introduction to wrestling. I also remember that day very significantly because once I left the room, after my friend was done laughing at me and we were going to go get something to eat, I was obviously very upset with it. I was a bit, scratched up and sweaty, in my street clothes. And I was really mad at him. And I said, and I already took like a mental note, like, okay, look, I already know who did this to me, who threw their elbow at me, who slammed me, who did all this to me. I'm going to come back tomorrow and I'm going to get each and every single one of them. So I go back to the wrestling room, which was a big mistake. I went back to the wrestling room and I got beat up again. And I kept going back. And then the coach said, "Well, if you're going to be here, then here's some wrestling shoes. So you might as well just start wrestling and start training." And since then I fell in love with the sport. I trained wrestling every day. It took over my life. It was the most amazing sport I ever been exposed to. I fell in love with it. And I was very fortunate because I met a lot of good friends in the process. I had a really good coach that was there. He was an assistant coach. Well, I had a great head coach in it, but the assistant coach really made an impact in my life. I remember during those weekends in California where we would they would host open mats at different various schools in Orange County, and he would pick us up in his old beat up little Hyundai. Shout out to Miguel. I appreciate you, man. It means a lot to me. He used to pick all of us up and pack us all in this little small little Hyundai, and he would just drive us all the way to these schools, and we would wrestle and get mat time. And for me, that was a big deal. I became a huge fan, and I think that's when UFC started coming out and whatnot. This is in the 90s, so that's when UFC was coming out, and you started seeing guys like Dan Severn, Frank, Ken Shamrock, and you started seeing guys like Hoist Gracie and things like that coming out and just putting on grappling displays and whatnot. So I did wrestling. I started wrestling my sophomore year, went all the way to my senior year. I wrestled I got to about my senior year where when I was in high school, I always wanted to be a champion. I always wanted to be a state champion. And I would always see a lot of I started following wrestling more. I started reading the newspaper. I know we read newspapers back then, and you would always follow like, okay, who's the who of wrestling in Orange County? And it was always the Calvary Chapels, Santa Ana and Poway and whatnot. So you would always follow them and whatnot. And I remember I made a commitment to myself. Okay, I want to be a champion. I want to do something special. My senior year. The problem is academically, I wasn't really that. I didn't really apply myself that well, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to. I became academically ineligible my sophomore and my junior year, and that was a really big disappointment for me because as much as I trained hard, I put a lot of time and effort into my wrestling and my training. I didn't put that much into my studies. And that's not just half the battle. That is the battle right there. That is very important. You have to have good grades to wrestle. And I didn't realize I was really immature. I made a lot of bad decisions, and I realized that it's important to make grades and that you have to continue on your season. And so I made a commitment to myself. All right, well, it's obvious I'm at my senior year now, and I'm not going to be able to achieve those goals that I couldn't get my sophomore and junior year. So that means my senior year, I made a commitment. I made a commitment to myself to seek tutoring, to get some extra academic help, to do all my assignments, to qualify for the league championships. And that was my goal. And I realized that that's where I got the introduction to goal setting. Yeah. And then I got introduced to accountability by my assistant coach. He said, hey, look, if we're going to do this, you need to be all in. That means progress reports on the weekly. That means, making sure that we check in with your teachers and whatnot. I said, we got to really get involved here. And sure enough, that's what they did. They got involved. And my senior year, I'm proud to say I ended up becoming academically eligible for the league finals. And I was having a stellar season in my league. I was undefeated until I met the #1 ranked guy in the county. And then, but you know what? It's okay because it showed, hey, look, you know what? If I want to compete with this guy and beat this guy, and he just happened to be in my league, then I need to be ready. I need to step it up. And then sure enough, the grade reports came out and they said, all right, Arreola, you're qualified. Let's get ready for the league finals. Let's do it. And so I was pumped. I was excited. And at the time I only had, I want to say I was about 25-3, I would say around the halfway point of the season. So I was feeling really good. And then I think as we got towards the end of the season, I was already I felt like I was finally hitting my peak. I was ready to go as I approached the league finals and the league championships. And then unfortunately, I got my first win in the first round. And then in the second round, the semifinal, I got upsetted. I got upset in the semifinals to go for the final. And back then in California in the 90s for the CIF, the top 2 in the league finals qualified for the CIF championships. So I ended up losing the semis, going down to third to fight for the bronze. And I ended up taking the bronze. And then I went in, I ended up earning that alternate spot. Obviously the top 2 went on to CIF. My only prayer was to get in as a lottery pick and whatnot. So, and I went in there and I would still attend the CIF practices and just go like I was expected to go to CIF. And then unfortunately, it didn't happen for me. That cut my career short. That was it for me. So once I finished wrestling, I took some time off to just I mean, I had plans to go, I had plans to go to college, but then I thought to myself, well, you know what? I wasn't really a good student in high school. So I don't really know if I'd be able to hack it in college. And that came with a lot of doubts. So what ended up happening was, I ended up just kind of working. I ended up getting a job, and a really good job actually. And I was making pretty good amount of money. And then when you get exposed to a lot of money, you end up becoming involved with the wrong people. I got involved with some pretty bad people. And that basically just, it took a lot of time out of my life. And I was making a lot of wrong decisions. And even worse, it was one of those things where it's like, no matter what, I'd always find myself going back to wrestling, going back and thinking about wrestling. You know, as much as I was out with these specific people, these bad groups of people, and I'm a firm believer that, you know, you don't go as far as your dream, you go as far as your team. And what I mean by that, I mean the people around you. And so I was definitely around a lot of people that I felt like I probably shouldn't have been around, picked up some bad habits. And sure enough, I mean, I ended up just getting in a lot of trouble. I ended up getting in a lot of trouble with the law. I even ended up picking up some, you know, sadly, I ended up picking up some addictions and things like that. So now I was battling through that adversity. And I remember, and I was involved in that kind of cycle, for that vicious cycle, for probably a good few years. I want to say probably from my early 20s all the way to about probably my mid 20s. And I remember my younger brother, Jason, he was in high school at the time. He was wrestling for Orange High School. And he mentioned to me, hey, look, you know, our high school has an opening for an assistant coach, you know. And at the time I really wasn't interested. You know, I was just kind of thinking about myself and just my own selfish ambitions and things like that. But I remember as a kid growing up, my younger brother, Jason, got exposed to wrestling by coming to my matches when I wrestled in high school at Fullerton. He would come with my mother and go, he was always there front row watching all my matches, supporting me and everything. And sometimes I'd even bring him to the practices and here and there. And it was really cool because, you know, like I felt like, you know, I had that connection with my brother. You know, it was wrestling, you know, plus we were big WWE fans. We'd also just watch, you know, you'd come watch me wrestle. And so he wanted to wrestle. And when he got into high school, that's when he told me about the coaching position, the assistant coach position. Yeah, I kind of blew him off a few times and said, you know what, I'm not really, you know, I can't do it. It's not worth my time and whatnot. But I had to hit a breaking point in my life where I needed to make a change. And sometimes that comes with a heavy price to pay, you know, because you waste a lot of time, you waste a lot of energy. And then sure enough, you end up getting into some serious trouble. And for me, that was the case. And another thing was I ended up losing one of my closest friends, unfortunately. So when I lost my friend, that's when I knew, okay, I need to make a change in my life. And that's when my little brother, sure enough, his timing was impeccable. I think I ended up getting like a phone call from him or whatnot saying, hey, look, we really need a coach. So, you know, if you want to do this, we can really use your help. And sure enough, I spoke with him. I talked to the coach that was in charge at the time, named Justin Young. And I took the job. I went in as an assistant coach. And I remember my first practice, the team really wasn't that good. It was a fixer-upper, we like to call it. And I got to know the kids. I was a very young coach. I went in about like, I think I went in about like 23, 24, I believe. And, you know, and when you, like anything, when you're trying to find your voice as a coach, you go to the next best thing. You go off of what you've been taught by your coaches. And sure enough, you know, I love my high school coaches, but they did a lot of yelling. They did a lot of finger pointing, a lot of, you know, they were hard on us. So, and sure enough, that's what I did. You know, I just followed that template because that was all I knew. But I was very, very fortunate though, because I would say the first year I did a lot of, you know, those, you know, I was still learning as a coach. But then I met a man by the name of Tim Byers, magnificent man. A man that I call my mentor today. He was actually a former assistant coach out of Yucca Valley High School, where he built a powerhouse program with Coach Vlad, who I think at one point was the women's Olympic wrestling coach or whatnot. Or he was so so he built a solid program over there out in Yucca Valley. And I think he's won, I want to say anywhere between 7 to 8 CIF titles and multiple CIF champions, a couple of state champions as well. So I was very fortunate to have him in our program. Of all places, he fell into Orange High School, you know what I mean? So I remember that year, it was a really good year for us at Orange. I remember Coach Byers pulling me aside a lot and speaking to me, hey, look, you know what? I like his approach because he's from Ohio, and he has a very, very wholesome and very good attitude, very positive attitude. He also was a math teacher. And so he would pull me aside and talk to me and say, hey, you know, look, there are ways we can go about certain things, you know, like, you know, he would give me a lot of pointers, a lot of tips. So I spent that entire year with them, just soaking it up like a sponge, soaking up as much information as I could from Coach Tim Byers, from Coach Justin Young, learning how to be patient with the kids, learning how to tell them what they need to know. Just a lot of trial and error, mainly error on my part. But, you know, I went to a lot of coaches clinics with Coach Byers. He took me to the Monterey Coaches Clinic of Champions back when they used to host it every year out in Monterey. So I got a chance to see a lot of great coaches, Rob Cole, whatnot. And I would remember all we had was a VHS camcorder. So we would just have that and we post it up there, and we would just watch coaches demonstrate and give their speeches and whatnot. And so I really did my homework on this, because I applied the same work ethic that I learned in wrestling to coaching. You know, if you want to be good at something, you have to be a student of the game. You have to have that student mentality. So sure enough, I started learning as much as I can from different coaches. And I remember that year, I want to say, I think it was 2006, Orange High School. We had a stellar year. We ended up going to CIF duels. We were runners up in the league. We produced a lot of league champions that year and some CIF place winners. We even had a guy go all the way to the Masters tournament and become one match away from going to state. And that's where I discovered girls wrestling. You know, a girls coach. So I had a female wrestler by the name of Lauren Barkley. This right here was a learning moment for me, because I've never worked with with female athletes before. So this was, you know, it was a crash course, but at the same time, it was really cool because, you know, I put a lot of time in with Lauren and whatnot, and she ended up going all the way to, we participated in the first ever California girls CIF regional tournament, and she ended up placing and going to state. So it was a really cool year for us overall. And then I think it showed what we can do as a team and what we can do as a staff if we work together and we really, you know, come through for the kids. And like anything else, I always ask questions, you know, even to this very day, I ask a lot of questions. And I think what got to a turning point for me where it was, okay, it has to be about more than just winning, you know, because at that time when I entered Orange, it was, my mindset was win, 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 but it goes beyond that. And I remember speaking to one of our California coaching Hall of Famers, and also very fortunate, you know, he happened to be here in Orange County. His name is Scott Glab. He was the Santa Ana head wrestling coach. And I pulled him aside. I said, because we were in the same league, I said, hey, coach, you know, what advice would you give, you know, to someone like me who's trying to, you know, really make an impact and help these students, you know, win? And well, he told me, he says, well, first off, right there, what you said right there, Richard, was, you know, don't focus on winning. Focus on trying to help your wrestlers become the best versions of themselves. Get involved in their lives. You know, care about making them good human beings, not have them focus on winning. Because if you show how much you care for them and you get involved in their lives, then winning will take care of itself. And that right there was very powerful for me. I still think about it to this very day. Once I was in Orange for a few years, I was in Orange for a long time. And then sure enough, I thought to myself, you know what, it's 2008. I'm the head coach now. So I started there as an assistant, and I was a volunteer assistant for a while before I became an actual paid assistant. So I was used to doing this for free long beforehand. You know, that's one thing I love about wrestling and coaches. You know, we do this because we love the sport. We do this because we want to make an impact in these kids' lives, not so much the money. The money, it doesn't mean nothing to us, because you can't, you know, it's nothing's more precious than building a relationship with your wrestlers. And so for me, when I got to finally, I achieved that position of head coach, you know, I realized that we lost a lot of wrestlers, and I realized that we probably weren't going to be as good. You know, we're going to go back to our rebuilding stage. So I thought to myself, okay, if we're going to do this with these young group of kids, we're going to have fun doing it. And sure enough, I started making practices, technique based. We'd wrestle, we'd go live at the same time. We had a lot of fun though. We enjoyed it because I figured if these kids are going to, if we're going to learn to wrestle, then we're going to have fun. I want them to have fun coming to practice, not dread coming to practice and say, oh, great. Coach Richard's going to grind me into the mat. No, I want them to come and enjoy the learning process. And then as I got to about halfway throughout the year, I kind of came to a turning point, another turning point in my life where I said to myself, well, you know what? I'm telling these kids to go and do good things with their lives and be good people, or go in and achieve their dreams. But I think it's about time I start backing up my own words. What do I mean by that? I mean, I decided to go back to school. I decided to go back to college. And I was 28 years old, and I even decided to go back and try out for the wrestling team, to be on the college, wrestling team. And the nearest college that we had, the nearest wrestling program we had was Santa Ana College. That program is under Vince Silva, my coach, former Oklahoma State All-American. He actually started as a walk-on and then ended up becoming, an All-American with, I think he used to be Kenny Monday's a dorm, they used to dorm together, and he knew John Smith. And so he's been exposed to, the best. He's wrestled against Iowa. He said Gable used to scream at him from across the mats and everything. And he was a great storyteller and whatnot. So it was, so I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go back to college, and I'm going to pursue a degree, and I'm going to try to become the first person in my family to get a college degree. And I think my brother at that time, my brother was with me throughout this whole journey too, throughout this whole coaching journey. And he decided also, hey, look, we're going to go together. So we ended up going to college together, and we enrolled, and we were full-time students. My brother was a starter right off the bat. Me, I was a redshirt freshman. I was at 141 pounds. My brother was 133 pounds. And for me, I wanted to soak up and get as much knowledge as I could. And at the same time, just get a chance to better myself and improve myself in a good institution of learning. Santa Ana College was a great school for me. And so when I got to Santa Ana College and got exposed to Vince Silva, I'll tell you what, it's a different mentality. It's a different standard. In high school, our standards, we were okay. In high school, I was a mediocre wrestler, but I didn't get better until I got to college. That's where I felt that was a game changer for me. That's where I saw the best version of myself, was in college. And it was all because of Vince Silva. Vince Silva taught us how to set goals. He taught us how to kind of be a machine when you're out there. If you're going to be the best at what you do, you have to understand. He used to tell us, you can't be normal. You have to do what others aren't willing to do. You have to pay the price. And, you have to balance your classes. You got to get up early in the morning at 5 a.m. and hit your runs. You got to train. You got to win all the sprints in practice. You got to win the sprints. So he taught us how to raise the bar, not just in the practice room, but in our lives. He says, you have to win at everything. But it comes with hard work, and it comes with a price. And the ultimate question I have to ask you is, are you willing to pay that price, or are you looking for a way out? So he has a very straightforward way of kind of making you answer these questions and be 100% real with yourself. And that's one thing I always admired about Vince Silva. He made a huge impact in my life. I became a solid technician because of him. Our bread and butters were always Oklahoma State style, cowboy style wrestling, single legs, butt drags, things like that. It's just, and just grit, 100% grit. And I was honored and proud to be a part of the, my brother was a starter, and he ended up going really far. He got, I think he ended up becoming a regional champion and whatnot. And for me, I had training partners. Like my training partner was the defending JUCO state champion, Jimmy Martinez. So it's like I had all my partners were all ranked #1 in the state and at the JUCO level. So those guys were my training partners. Those guys used to grind me into the mat, and I used to get takedowns on them, and it was a scrap fest, and it was good times. But it was brotherhood though. It was a beautiful thing. and there's nothing that can replace those memories, because those guys that I was that were on that team, we were more than just teammates. We were brothers. We took care of each other. We were there for one another. We made each other better. And every time we were together, it's like we were a unit. And even the red shirts, even the backups, like we would go to opens and collegiate opens, and even our red shirts, our backups, we would still make it to the finals. We would sometimes meet the starters in the finals. Like, that's how solid of a team we were. But it also goes to show how in sync we were. I firmly believe that if you want to build a solid team, everyone has to be on the same page, and everyone has to really embrace that family mentality. And that's what Vince Silva was really good at. And that's what made it. That's why we bought into the system, was that we're going to grind together. We're going to ride together. We're going to bleed together, and we have each other's backs. And it has to go beyond the mat. And for us, Vince Silva always just taught us to take care of each other, both on and off the mat. And but it was a great thing. And I'm happy to say that in 2009, we won the state championship for junior college in California. And I was honored to be a part of that team. And after that, it was great, and I was doing well academically. And I was even surprised by myself, because when I first got into college, I had doubts. I'm like, oh, great. Well, I already clicked registered. I'm already here. So I wasn't a good student in high school. I didn't apply myself. But then as I got into college, I realized that, I can do this. I just have to apply myself. I have to apply that's where I was taught to apply the right way on how to study, or how to implement that same work ethic in wrestling that I do into my studies. Because I felt in high school I was too immature. I couldn't understand that. But in college, when you're surrounded by guys that were like, that making grades was not a big deal. Everyone made grades, where their goals were set on being a state champion, to be a national champion, things like that. When you got guys that have high goals like that, and I was surrounded by guys like that, making grades was easy. I was academically eligible every year during my college year because of those guys. And it goes to show, like I said before, you don't go as far as your dream, you go as far as your team. So for me, that was the mindset that I had. And I remember spending countless hours, my brother and I, in that math lab, and math was my weakest subject. And then when I finished college and being around those guys and just embracing the attitude of working hard and studying and applying the same work ethic, I ended up achieving a 4.0 GPA. I ended up passing all my math classes with all A's. I think I went for 2 straight semesters, just Phi Theta Kappa, all academics. And it was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. I was doing it. And a lot of it was because of the sport of wrestling. A lot of it was because being around those guys that had these high standards, these championship standards, these standards of, hey, look, I'm not going to settle for just being okay. I want to be good, but I want to be great. And I think that was the, it's 100% contagious. It was very contagious. And I think that's what helped me to move into that position where, okay, I can do this, to get into that mindset and belief that I can do this. I can get my college degree. And then sure enough, I did graduate. I graduated from Santa Ana College. I got my my AA, and during that time, when I was wrestling, even as our red shirts and our starters, we were all getting scholarships. Like, once we won the state championship, a lot of us were getting offers. A lot of our starters were getting offers from, Division I, NAIA, even our red shirts. I was getting offers from different schools and everything. And but I had my eyes set on this one college, just because I knew I was having a stellar year with my grades. And believe it or not, when I got the letter, I couldn't believe it. I got the letter in the mail. It was from Columbia, and it was an Ivy League school. And I was like, wow, I couldn't believe it. I went from like barely graduating high school to having Columbia wanting to, have me as a student. So I was excited. And I applied. I immediately applied, and I found out that a wrestling team, and I said, great. And I was emailing the coach, and I think Coach Buckley was the coach at the time, and I was just emailing him and whatnot, like, hey, coach, I want to come and everything, and I'm excited, and I want to take a trip out there. And I was I was so happy, and just like, and already it was narrowed down between Columbia, and I visited Boise State, and then and for local, obviously, because I'm a California boy locally, and kinesiology was going to be my major. I already knew I wanted to be a kinesiology major. Obviously Columbia didn't have a kinesiology major, didn't have a kinesiology department. Cal State Fullerton did. Cal State Fullerton had the best kinesiology program here in Southern California. At that time, however, I think their wrestling team was on the chopping block, and I didn't know if they were going to have a program or not. So that's why it was kind of like my last resort school, and whatnot. And sure enough, I had this clear plan. I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. I have my grades set. I'm going to wrestle for Columbia. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make my parents proud. I'm going to make it happen and whatnot. And sure enough, that's when I hit a year called 2010. And in 2010, what ended up happening was I suffered a really bad accident on the 4th of July. I ended up getting struck by a vehicle in broad daylight. I got hit by a car crossing the street at 40 miles an hour. And just before I made the cut, I saw it coming. I was crossing the street, and then I realized, oh, this person isn't slowing down. So I was already halfway in the middle of the street. I turned the cut, and I thought I made it. And the moment I got to about 5 feet to the street, I got clipped. My leg got clipped. I flipped in the air. I remember a few things. I remember when I got hit, I did kind of topple on top of the car. I remember my head bouncing off the windshield, and I hit the floor, and my leg was snapped in two. I suffered a compound fracture of the tibia and fibula, and it, man, it was a hard one. It was a hard one because after it happened, all I could think about was wrestling. And I think at that year, I still had another year of eligibility, and I was slated. I had aspirations of finishing off my last wrestling season and be a starter at 141 pounds. And that didn't happen. My leg was snapped in two. So it was a grueling process. I got rushed to emergency surgery. They fixed my leg. They put a titanium rod that connects all the way from my knee down to my ankle. I suffered a lot of trauma to the leg. A lot of the nerves were damaged because the bone shredded right through ligaments, tendons, nerves. I got 2 screws in my ankle, and I got 2 screws in my knee that are still here to this very day. So I was done for the season. And it was heartbreaking because I remember talking to my coach on the phone, and I was sad. I was crying to Vince Silva and everything, and I was just really sad. And I wanted to finish off my year. I wanted to be a state champion. I wanted to improve my stock before I went in, build some momentum before I went to Columbia. And obviously, since I couldn't wrestle, I basically had to take an academic. I was going to summer school at the time, and I had to take an academic leave of absence, medical leave of absence for that academic year, or that summer semester. And I ended up going through a rigorous rehab program, and I came back on crutches to school that next semester. I think it was fall of 2010. Obviously, I was out for the season. I was in crutches, and I remember my mind is just, you don't quite realize who you really are when you know everything's been taken away from you. I think every athlete comes to a point where you're going to be, when you suffer an injury, that's where the real battle begins. It's not on the mat. It's where, if you can handle coming back from what you went through. So you find out who you really are when everything's been taken away from you. And it was a rough patch in my life. A lot of things went wrong during that 2010 year, and it went wrong when it rained. It poured on me. I couldn't wrestle that year. I was done for the season. My grades were slipping. At the time, I had a girlfriend at the time. We broke up, and so everything you think that was going wrong in life was going wrong for me. And it was really rough. But I kept showing up to practice. I kept every day I was there and never missed a practice. I was there in crutches until the cast was taken off. I would go there with resistance bands. I was there and I was just doing my exercises. Everyone was wrestling, and my brother was on the team and he was wrestling and whatnot. And I wanted to be out there with him. I wanted to be out there with all my teammates. And that was a rough year for us. That was after we just won the title, and now we were losing the teams that we would blow out the past year. So that was really hard to watch too. We were watching our team just go through a rough patch, and I couldn't be out there with my brothers to help them. And so I was there and I was just doing my rehab exercises, just sitting there. I just had tunnel vision. I just thought to myself, all right, I'm going to get back out there one way or another. I'm going to get back out there, and I just kept working at it. And at that point, it's just, things just seemed to get worse for me because I was healing. My leg was healing, but the mobility and the stability and certain things that go with my leg weren't there anymore. I could be able to cut easy on a single leg. I could be able to come up faster. I could be able to, hit an Iranian, slide my knees under, it wasn't there. The mobility, the flexibility, the dexterity in my knee, it wasn't there. And it was very frustrating. I had to wear like a knee brace and whatnot. And so I had to learn to wrestle on my knees and whatnot. So it was very challenging. And to top it off, I was set to go to Colombia and whatnot. And then they sent me a letter. Well, we're looking at your grades and everything. And, it's just basically in a nutshell, they were just saying that, we're not sure if you'll be able to make it, get in here. And we could probably offer you a partial scholarship. But I thought to myself, well, where am I going to get like $50,000, like $75,000? It's like, no way. So my dream of going to Colombia was, it was basically over, and so everything was just going south for me. And I remember being in a biology class, and there was well, he's now one of my closest friends now, but there was a guy in there by the name of John Carr. And we would just shoot it up in class all the time, just talk and just shoot the breeze. And he ended up telling me, hey, because you'd always see me in crutches, and I would tell him about my injury and everything. And he just said, hey, look, you know what, dude, I've been a couple of you guys' wrestling matches. Says, I think you'd be great for jiu-jitsu. And I thought to myself, like, jiu-jitsu. I'm like, I don't know about that. I was like, I want to wrestle. That's what I said. I said, I want to wrestle, but I would just listen to him. But every time you see me, yeah, I know this great gym, you got to come and you got to come try jiu-jitsu. I think you're going to be great. You can apply your same wrestling techniques and, stuff like that. And I wasn't having it. And sure enough, as time went on, I was just performing horribly on the mat. I was in practices, like I was leaving practice hurt every time. I was always in pain. It just wasn't panning out for me. I felt like I was handicapped. I felt like I wasn't able to perform at my best. And it was very, very frustrating because as much time as I put into the rehab, when I went in and I trained and I finished a practice, my knee, every time my leg was always in pain. And it was just very, very frustrating. So my buddy John ended up just talking to me and saying, hey, look, dude, I know I keep bothering you, but look, dude, this is Jim in Irvine. You got to come check it out. And I got tired of hearing them bug me about it. So I just wanted to show up just to shut them up. So he ended up telling me there's this place in Irvine called Timoyama, which is an MMA gym. And I went there one afternoon. I checked it out. I walked into the gym, and sure enough, there were trophies everywhere, championship belts everywhere. There were pictures of MMA fighters, jiu-jitsu grapplers, and it's nothing I ever seen before. It was a huge place. They had a cage there. They had a lot of mat space there. So I said, okay, all right, well, you got my attention. I see the belts. I see the mats. All right, let's try it out. My first class was an MMA class, but it involved a lot of grappling involved. So right when you said grappling, I thought, okay, wrestling. So I did that class. But my first actual jiu-jitsu class was a no-gi class. It was by my professor. His name is Mo Kayat. And Mo Kayat is actually my professor's coach. It's his name. I'm a brown belt under Jiva Santana. And Professor Mo Kayat is a student. Mo is Jiva's black belt. And so I attended his no-gi class. And I started just wrestling everybody, and I started just beating everybody up. And don't get me wrong, I got caught a couple of times too, you know, like when people pull guard, and I was like, what is this? You're going on your back? It's like, what is this madness here? And sure enough, I just developed a passion for it. And plus at the time, I was, like I said, I was going through a lot of disappointments in my life, and I was going through a hard time. And I really didn't see any hope at that time. And I didn't even know if I was even graduate college, because just everything was just slipping for me. But when I went to that first jiu-jitsu class, I felt less in pain. I felt less hurt. I felt like I just felt better. And it was the first time I felt good in a while. And little did I know, you know, that one class would turn into something so life-changing.
Yeah, that's first up, that's an amazing story, you know. And one of the thoughts I had during that was, one of my college coaches said, I wish every college wrestler could take some time off and be a coach and then come back and wrestle. I think they would be a better wrestler, you know. So for you, first off, that's hilarious the way you got into high school wrestling, you know. I love it. And then being able to take a little bit of time off, even though you were going through a rough patch and going down the wrong road and doing those things, which again, man, I mean, wrestling, probably every sport does this, but I'm biased, right? But it has a way of like drawing people in and getting them back on the right path a lot of times. I went off the path a lot of times in my life, and many times. And it was because I had wrestling that I was able to kind of come back and refocus. You know, so you getting in there and becoming a coach, and then how huge is that for your athletes and other people to see and other people to hear right now? Like, hey, you know what, man? Like, I'm not satisfied with where I'm at, and I feel like I have more than, hey, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to be the first person in my family to graduate, you know. And that's my dad. My dad was the first person in our family to ever go to college and to graduate. And so then for me, I was like, oh, I want to do that too, you know. And thankfully wrestling was a path. But and then the second thing, you know, so wrestling kind of got you on the right path, but then jiu-jitsu was able to kind of step into your life, or maybe God put that in your life and take you down another route, you know, which we never know, right? Hindsight's 2020. But sometimes like we get to these places in our life with peaks and valleys, and you don't know what's around the corner. And like, man, like things are going so bad right now. I wish I could get out of this. And something you never even expected shows up. You know, for me, jiu-jitsu kind of showed up in my life at a time where things were good with my wife and my children and those type of things. But I felt, because I had competed my whole life, I needed some sort of competitive outlet, you know, and I didn't know what that was going to be. And it ended up being jiu-jitsu for a while. And then I was really able to take that and utilize what I learned there as a coach in the sport of wrestling, and really kind of gain a passion and respect for it. And to this day, and then I feel like it made me a much better wrestling coach, you know. So yeah, so there's so many great things that, you know, that you had right there in that path. Now you got into jiu-jitsu, started training. Of course, you had a ton of success. Tell me a little bit about that, man. Like, so going in and winning these big competitions, like how long did you train before you were kind of like, I think I'm pretty dang good at this, and I'm going to start like really challenging myself to become great?
Oh, well, I think when I got into competition, well, first off, when I started training jiu-jitsu, my whole idea wasn't to get into competition. I didn't even know jiu-jitsu competitions existed. When I got into jiu-jitsu, it was more just to stop from hurting, because I was battling that depression because of, you know, losing everything. You know, I was losing my girlfriend at the time, my scholarship. I lost the scholarship. I wasn't wrestling anymore. I basically wasn't performing the way I wanted to in wrestling. It was more because when I started training jiu-jitsu, it was to take away the pain. And every time I went to practice, the pain went away gradually. It went away gradually. And then before you know it, I started gaining more confidence. I started understanding the techniques a little better. I was still a white belt, so I was still very spazzy and very egotistical and very hyper competitive. So shout out to my coaches, Jiva Santana and Mo Kayat, for your patience. I really appreciate that. But I know that when I decided to do a competition, it was, I want to say, when I was probably about a few months into jiu-jitsu. I would say maybe about, let's see, I started in 2012. So I would say, yeah, actually, you know what, man? I think I dove right into probably in about 3-4 months, I think. 3-4 months, I believe. Yeah, because I started training in 2012. My first competition was in 2012, so it really wasn't that long. I trained, and when I found out, my coach said, "Hey, look, there are tournaments." And I'm like, "There's tournaments?" I'm like, "Yeah." So at that point, I was starting to get better. I was starting to feel better mentally. I was starting to get in a better place. And then my coach said, "Hey, yeah, there's tournaments. You can do these things. You can do gi and no gi and whatnot." And and that's when I did my first tournament, which was the no gi tournament. It was called the Grappling X tournament, and it was held in a high school gym. And I'm not gonna lie, I went in there overconfident because I thought, man, I came from a state championship team. I'm just gonna smash through these guys. Typical egotistical attitude. And it was actually the exact opposite. I went into the tournament, my first match, and I lost. I thought I was just gonna wrestle this guy and just beat him up. And sure enough, I went in and I got triangled. And I got submitted in probably in about a couple of minutes. And that brought me down to planet Earth real fast. And then I ended up fighting my next match, and I won that match. And then I ended up making it to the bronze round. So I thought, oh, okay, I can probably go after the bronze medal. But sure enough, I ended up meeting the same guy that submitted me in a triangle for bronze. And he did the exact same thing to me again. He tapped me out with the triangle choke. So that kind of like brought my confidence level down a little further down. And I just thought to myself, man, you know what? Maybe maybe I shouldn't compete. Maybe this just isn't for me. I mean, I still want to train jiu-jitsu, but maybe competition just isn't for me. So I ended up just going back to practice the next day. And I'm not gonna lie though, it did kind of irk me because I knew myself, and I knew that, hey, look, you know what, I could have beaten that guy. But I talked to my coach, and he said, well, just come to practice. And just come to practice and just get back at it. And I remember taking a group picture with all of because I went, I think it was 4 of us that went, and I'm the only one without a medal. Everyone got a medal. And I was sitting there with this, throwing on this fake smile, and I just thought to myself, you know what? I don't want this to happen again. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to go to no gi practice, and I'm going to train. I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to do it again. And when I went back, that's when I started working with Jiva, and that's when I started training the gi. And that's when I found out, well, if you want to get ranked, then you got to train the gi. And I'm like, what? Like, yeah, in my gym, if you want to get ranked in your belt, you got to train the gi. And so I said, fine. I started putting on the gi, and I still had in the back of my head, I want to be a no-gi champion. But when I went in there at the gi, very, very frustrating, very rough, very hard day. The grips, people grabbing you, people, all I knew was wrestling. So I went in there and just was using no-gi grips, and everyone was using gi grips. Everyone was pulling guard. Everyone was getting to De La Hiva. They were tangling me up. They have a lot more strength because of the fact that they're holding on and gripping the gi. So I felt like I was a fish out of water. I felt like I was a rookie all over again. Granted, I still was, but anyway, it was very frustrating. I was getting beat up left and right. I was doing okay with some of the white belts, but when I got to like more experienced blue belts, things like that, purple belts, brown belts, I was getting killed. And I thought, hey, look, I'm just going to show up. I'm just going to keep showing up and keep at it. And I'm, even though I was getting very frustrated with the process, and I was getting very upset with the process, I was still going to practice, but I was still there front row for no-gi. I was still doing no-gi, and I was still doing no-gi, but gi was something I was training avidly now. And so I remember I had this one gi. It was a hand-me-down from my buddy at the front desk. He gave it to me, and it was a size too big. So I was walking around with the baggy gi and just rolling and everything. So, I mean, when I was in college, I didn't really have a lot of money. And at that time, that's when I made the decision to go to Cal State Fullerton. So I thought, okay, well, I have to go for what I can get into now, which is Cal State Fullerton. So I went in, I got into Cal State Fullerton, and I began the kinesiology program over there for my bachelor's. And at the time, that's when I started really getting deep into jiu-jitsu. I started training every day, had a great year academically. I was already on the honor society for the kinesiology program. But I just kept going to practice, and I just kept wanting to strive to improve. And then as and we had a lot of guys that competed too. So I was already getting pumped and ready, but my mind was set already. No gi. I want to go back and do a no gi competition to get back what I lost at that tournament. But when I talked to Jiva, he said, the American Nationals are coming up. I actually didn't know what they were. I just heard nationals. He said, you should do it. And I thought to myself, gi tournament. Like, I thought to myself, I'll probably do just as bad because I'm already a fish out of water with gi. So I already made in my mind that, you know, I'm probably not going to do it, but he kept like kind of motivating me, kept pushing me to do it. So I caved in and I did it. And I ended up winning the tournament. Actually, I ended up winning the tournament. I ended up winning the American Nationals in 2013. And I couldn't believe it. It was my first ever gold medal. It was my first gold medal in jiu-jitsu, and I was really excited. I got back to the practice room, and I just kept going. I kept showing up. I kept working, and you know, I had some things that lured in my mind still from the previous breakup that I went through. I was still going through. I'm not gonna lie. I was still thinking about wrestling. I was still thinking about, you know, what I lost in the past. You know, it would kind of lurk in my mind here and there. And it was still a little fresh. So anyway, during that time, I was still a white belt, and I was just, I must have competed like in like 4 back-to-back tournaments at white belt, and I was winning all of them. So I was undefeated. So I think at that point I was like 10-0. So and then sure enough, Jiva told me, all right, guys, it's time to get ready for PANS. And I'm like, PANS? I'm like, what's PANS? It was the Pan American Games, the Pan American Jiu-Jitsu Championships hosted by the IBJJF. They just so happened to be hosted here in California, in Irvine. And I was doing like small gym in-house tournaments, basketball, like on the basketball floor type of stuff. So I've never been exposed to what PANS was offering. And he said, hey, yeah, just give it a shot. He says, you're doing good, go for it. And sure enough, I said, all right, I'm going to do it. And I didn't know what I was getting myself into until I actually walked into the venue. I walked into the venue. I kid you not, man. There was like 20 mats, and there was like video cameras everywhere. People screaming and shouting in different languages. I heard people, yelling, in Portuguese. I heard people yelling in all kinds of different languages. Just like it was packed. It was just the atmosphere. It was electric. It was something I'd never been a part of ever. So it was very nerve-wracking. And I was a white belt, and I think at the time, I only had like maybe 2 or 3 stripes on my belt. And I'm seeing other white belts, and they have like 4 stripes and everything, and their belts are gray and everything. And you're thinking to yourself, all right, these guys are seasoned. These guys came to play. So, but this is where I feel like where wrestling, being a part of that state championship team, being a part of the Vince Silva's program really helped improve my mindset, because I was taught to endure harsh conditions. I was taught to wrestle through adversity, to wrestle through injuries, to wrestle through steaming hot 90-degree practices, winning sprints, things like that. Like I was already groomed for harsh conditions. And one thing that Vince Silva always taught us, like he says we manufacture champions, but we manufacture people that can go through adversity. And that was something that stuck in my mind. So when I got here, I was blown away by the atmosphere, but I thought to myself, all right, I didn't come this far to come this far. So I went in, my very first match off PANS, I got thrown on my head in a judo throw. And I thought the match was over. So he threw me on my head. I bounced back up. I got back up, and I ended up winning the match by points, like I think 4-0. And then I got into the quarters, and I ended up beating that guy pretty convincingly. And then I got into the semis, and then this guy was tall. He was like a giant, and I'm thinking like, how did he make this weight with the gi on? So I just thought to myself, like, this guy's huge. And I ended up squeaking by 1-0. And sure enough, I got to the finals. And when I got to the finals, I couldn't believe it. I was like sitting there in the bullpen, and I was just bouncing around, and I'm like, I'm in the finals of the Pan American Championships. And I'm just thought to myself, like, I'm here. I went through everything. I lost a scholarship. I lost my girl. I lost my leg. But I'm here. I'm here, and I'm about to fight this guy. And I thought to myself, it's all, I got to go for it. I got to be all in. So sure enough, I went out there and, by the score of 1-0, again, I won the Pan title. And the most memorable moment of that night was, there are two memorable moments of that night. I got to the podium and my professor took my white belt off and tied a blue belt around my waist on the podium. And I was beyond thrilled. But I remember, the most important thing I remember about that evening was, after everything was done and everyone started closing up, I sat in the parking structure after everyone left. I think I was the last car there. And I was just sitting there. The blue belt was over I took off my gi, because at that point I was just breathing heavy. I was like on cloud nine, but I was hot in that gi, So I took that gi off and I was sitting in my clothes, still sweaty from the competition, fingers taped up. And I was just sitting there, and like the belt was over my neck, and so was the medal. And I was sitting there just looking at it. And I was just staring at it. And I think this is the only time I really actually talked about it, first time ever. So, but I got emotional. I cried. I cried because everything that I went through, everything that I had to endure, disappointment after disappointment after disappointment, to get to this point. To me, I was proud of myself. And I knew that I can do this. I knew that this is what I want to do. This is where I want to be. And this is the man I want to become. And after that, I just kept going. Blue belt, purple belt, brown belt. As time went on, I just became active. I competed. I'm a brown belt now. I'm a brown belt, third degree. And I've been competing nonstop for 8.5 years. So I went from started with adults, then I did masters, and then I did master 2. So I've been competing a lot as a masters competitor since then. I haven't stopped. I've won the Masters World title. I've medaled in that tournament 3 times. I've won the Pan championship. That was my first that night, but I ended up winning another one at purple, and ended up winning another one in no gi division in New York. And then I ended up winning no gi worlds at every belt level thus far. So I've won it at blue, I've won it at purple, and I've won it at brown recently. And obviously, because of COVID, they shut the no gi worlds down this year, so I wasn't able to repeat. But I would like to do it as a black belt. And so yeah, since then I just kept going. I haven't stopped. And like anything, when you train something or you learn something new, like with jiu-jitsu, I applied the same wrestling work ethic, but I had to take on a different mindset, because it's a different chapter. It's a different season of my life. When you embark on something like jiu-jitsu, there's no room for ego, because then there's, you have to be a student of the game. And I think if you apply that into anything in life, you'll be successful. For me, it was, okay, in order for me to get good, like I need to focus on being a good student. I need to learn the technique. I need to drill the technique, and I need to just repeat that process. I need to focus on improving, not winning, because if I improve, winning will take care of itself. So I focused a lot on progress, not perfection. Gradually make progress each day. Consistency, that's always been my compass. That's always been something I always teach my students. Consistency. If you're consistent in everything you do in this life, especially when you're trying to achieve something good or positive in your life, you're going to be very successful. And I also believe when I approach my practices, I focus on the small to achieve the big. Yeah. What do I mean? I mean, goal setting, gradual steps, small steps. Start with small steps. So if you struggle with a certain technique, focus on just drilling the technique, learning it, going through all the steps, drilling very, very, very slowly. And then from there, gradually increase the match speed. little by little. And if you feel like you botched a certain detail, then go back and continue drilling the move very, very slowly. You know, I always try to make that a point with my training, and I preach that to my students as well. Focus on small goals to achieve big goals. You know what I mean? Because when you're when you focus on the micro, gradual micro steps, you'll always achieve the macro.
Yeah.
And I also would tell my students that, you know, we always decide what we fix our focus on. And I think in jiu-jitsu, that's what's taught me a lot. Meaning back then I would find myself going back into that old way of thinking, you know, the old Richard that was battling his adversity, his addictions, his, you know, the old Richard, instead of fixing my focus on the new Richard, instead of fixing my focus on the positives, not the negatives. And I think we can also implement that into our training. I know, because I would implement that into my training. I always would say to myself, yeah, you know, I choose what I focus on. I can either focus on things that are going on outside the gym, or I can be present now and focus on what's happening right now. The instructions my professor's telling me now, the things that are going on now. I can choose to fix my focus on the positive or to dwell on the negative. That's 100% a choice. That's a choice we all have to make. And that's a choice that I had to make. And I had to realize that. I'm a firm believer of how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yeah.
And I believe that if I'm coming in to practice and I'm giving and I'm spacing out, or I'm just saying, can we wrap this up so we could just start live rolling? And believe me, I did that a lot as a white belt. So egotistical I was, even as blue belt, you know. But for me, I kind of had to say to myself, well, hold on a second. As I matured on the mat and I matured, I got more, like, I wised up, I would say, more towards the end of my blue, entering my purple, where I need to focus on becoming a better student, because how I handle myself in practice is how I'm going to handle myself out there in the competition mats. That's how I'm going to handle myself out there in the real world. If I'm not, you know, practicing consistency and I'm going half-hearted efforts and I'm having a bad attitude, then that's how I'm going to be out of my life.
Yeah.
How you do anything is how you do everything. And that, like anything, comes with the price. You know, I'm the type of guy where, unfortunately, I had to learn the hard way. I always find myself that I'm always learning the hard way, or I'm always having to lose something in order to understand that. And for me, the turning point was a blue belt. I won my first no-gi world title, IBJJF no-gi world title, as a blue belt. And the following year, I was set to defend my title. And my plan was to go back to back. Now, the thing is during that whole time, I would use my wrestling. I was only doing my standing work. I would wrestle you, I would take you down, and I would pass your guard. That was my entire game plan. It's always been my game plan since white all the way to blue. And then when I got to the next year to defend my title at blue belt, my plan was to do the same thing so I can win my second straight title. But the problem is, during that whole time in the practice room, I didn't sit on my butt at all. I didn't develop my guard. I didn't even take time to even practice my guard or moves or things from the guard position. And sure enough, when I got to the tournament, you know, I always had it in the back of my head that, hey, look, you know, I know I'm a good wrestler, but I know there's somebody out there better. And that's one thing wrestling always teaches us, that there's always somebody out there that's bigger and badder. And it's the same with jiu-jitsu. If you don't make the improvements and you don't evolve and you don't develop your game, all aspects of your game, top, bottom, standing, and everything, you're going to learn a harsh lesson that somebody did do it and they're going to make you pay for it. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. In the semifinals to defend my title, I ended up running into a much better college wrestler. And it was a good scrap, but he took me down. I was down 2-0. There was probably about less than a minute left. And I just, you know, my coach was, you know, I think my coach was yelling, pull guard or something like that, or something. I felt like there was a voice in my head that said, pull guard. And when I pulled guard, the guy didn't know what to do. But here's the thing. I didn't know what to do either, because I wasn't prepared. And because of that, I ended up like trying to get a sweep or something like that. And I kind of almost got it. But because of the fact that I didn't drill it enough and I didn't train guard enough, you know, it cost me the match, and I ended up losing 2-0. And I thought to myself, imagine if I would have trained guard. Imagine if I would have sat on my butt in practice. Imagine if I would have done my homework, but I didn't. And I went in there unprepared, and it cost me the title, and I ended up getting bronze. So that bronze medal taught me to play guard. And I ended up talking to my coach, and he told me, look, you're going to sit on your butt, and you're going to stay in your butt on every practice. And if you get up, that's going to be a problem. The only time I want you coming up is for a sweep, but you're not going to go on your feet. You're going to sit on your butt, and you're going to play guard. You're going to stay there. I'm not going to argue with Jiva Santana. I said, yes, sir. So I sat down on my butt, and I played guard for like 2 years. Played guard. I got my guard passed. I got people getting behind me. I got people taking my back, because naturally when you pass your guard, wrestler's reaction, you turn to your belly, you know, and I would do that. I went back to old bad habits, and it was a grueling, frustrating process, but it paid off. And I think this is where I was learning my lesson here. When you're learning something new and it's very, very uncomfortable, playing the guard was very, very uncomfortable for me. And if you think about it in life, when we pursue something, when we make a decision, we make a choice to pursue something new, to pursue something different that'll make us better, it's going to be very, very uncomfortable, because we want to go back to our old habits. We want to go back to our old ways of thinking, our old ways of our old remedies. But imagine if during that whole time, if I just said, forget this, I quit, I'm just going to go back to standing, I'm not going to even deal with this, then I wouldn't have developed my guard. I still think my guard is a work in progress, but in life, you know, I think we have to endure that time of being stretched, that discomfort. You know what I mean? You have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. So uncomfortable feels comfortable. Hope I didn't lose you on that one, but yeah. Yeah. So for me, it was just learning how to be comfortable in those bad spots, knowing that I was going to get my guard passed, I was going to experience frustration, disappointment, and it taught me humility. It taught me to be humble and to understand that there's more to this game than just what I was doing. So it gave me a newfound respect for the process. It gave me a newfound respect for the art, and it also taught me to learn a new skill and to work through those emotions, and work through those feelings. And I'm hoping that, you know, we can all learn to work through our discomforts.
Yeah, I tell you what, man, I've been humbled a number of times in the sport of wrestling and jiu-jitsu, you know, and like you said, I mean, we all have egos, but sometimes, especially when you get really good at something, you can let your ego take control, you know. But whenever you come to a hand-to-hand combat sport, like you said, there's always somebody bigger, badder, tougher, and you get humbled. And at that point, you either get broke or you get better, you know, and you figure out how to get better. So, you know, I was going back in your story real quick. I kind of made this correlation. Whenever you started wrestling in college, your grades started doing really good. And then whenever you really got heavy into jiu-jitsu, your grades started doing good as well. And a lot of times, like, whenever we are successful in a discipline, we can add another discipline on top of that to be successful. And then, but the same thing, vice versa, you know, sometimes if we let up in one area, we can begin to let up in another area as well, and then go the opposite direction, you know? So finding those things you're passionate about that you can seek out, you can go through the discomfort and then begin to get better at those, hopefully will inspire you to be better in other areas as well. And it's something I constantly try to talk to my wrestlers and my athletes about. You know, hey, if you're doing good in wrestling, you should also be doing good in school. Because like you said, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. The exact work ethic, the exact same focus, the exact same things that are making you good on the mat. You can use those in the classroom, and you should be using those in the classroom to get good. Don't let one area slide, man. Try to, as much as possible, be complete and whole and good at everything that you do. You're not going to be perfect, but let those things bounce off of each other. You know, and then you talked about consistency, which is so huge. One of my assistant coaches, he says this all the time, and he got it from one of his college coaches, but It's funny, we'll be in a dual meet or something, and sometimes maybe there will be an opening and a kid doesn't have anyone to wrestle and he just gets his hand raised. And then the coach will be like, hey, just showing up's half the battle. But that's true in a much deeper level. Just showing up over and over and over. People want to get in better shape. Man, maybe you don't even have a great workout program, but guess what? Just continue to show up, just continue to work out, continue to try, be consistent with it. And over time, you're going to get better. And then as you get better, hopefully you find that passion, because now it's a journey for you. And then you really start wanting to get great at it. And one more thing I want to point out that really kind of stuck out to me, and this is sort of the coaching thing, but you were talking about the process of learning new moves. Often my athletes, they'll will show something, and I'm real big into details, man, because details make the difference. But they'll try to do it real fast, and then they'll miss half the steps. And I'm like, all right, smooth is fast, guys, smooth is fast. Because when you're learning something new, you're setting neural pathways. Your mind muscle connection, you're setting neural pathways. So if you're going out and you're doing it wrong over and over, you're creating those neural pathways to do it wrong. So we got to slow down the process. We got to do it correctly, learn the correct neural pathways. Eventually you can start to speed that up. And next thing you know, you're hitting it very efficiently. You're hitting it fluidly, but
yeah, I agree with you, coach. Yeah, I'm sorry, coach, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it is a process. It's not something that every now and then you might learn something new, like, bam, you just pick it up and you got it. And the more high level you get, the more you learn to do that. But even if you're at the highest levels, and one of the things I love about jiu-jitsu, one of the things I love about wrestling, there is no absolute mastery. Kel Sanderson, one of the best wrestlers in history, I guarantee you is still learning in the sport of wrestling. If you become, a third degree black belt, you're still learning, it doesn't matter what it is. And I like to take these principles and move them over. Maybe you are CEO of a company and your company is just killing it. You still got to be learning how to be a better leader, how can we be more efficient. And that is a life principle. And I love that because you can tangibly see it in jiu-jitsu and wrestling, and you can feel it.
Absolutely. Learning is nonstop. If you want to develop and progress in anything that you want to do, that's worthwhile. You can't stop being a student. You always have to keep learning. Even as a coach to this very day, I still continue to, to learn more about technique, develop technique, things, figure out ways on how I can make learning more efficient and simpler for my students. And you brought up a very interesting point, showing up. Showing up is so important. You'd be surprised how many times I've dealt with a lot of, whether it be wrestlers or some of my students in the past, when they don't show up, it's like, it's one of those things where if you show up, you're always going to know what to do. But when you don't show up, then you're playing catch up. You stop your progress. And then when you go into practice and say you miss like 2 days, 3 days of practice, or even a week, heaven forbid, and you walk into the practice room and you get beat up by the guy that you used to beat up because he's progressing. Everyone's progressing. And I always try to preach consistency. And for another thing, factor that I think is key is environment, because here's the thing, environment plays a role, but I also think it shouldn't be an excuse, because for me, for me, when I was in college, I didn't live in a dorm. You know what I mean? I was one of that very, very small population of students that unfortunately didn't have a place to live, because when I was in college, I was broke. I worked like 3 jobs, and most of my money went to food, to pay my tuition, and to just paying for my jiu-jitsu, because jiu-jitsu is expensive, and later on, as time went on, I was working like 3 dead-end jobs. I wouldn't call them dead-end, but they weren't the best jobs. A lot of those retail jobs. I'd get up and work graveyard shifts, and I still have to get home and study and things like that. And so at the time in college, I would say from when I was a blue belt all the way to, I want to say, purple, those are some pretty hard 3 years for me, because in college, I didn't have a place to live. I tried to afford a place. I think I was renting a room at the time, but be able to afford jiu-jitsu and college tuition and food and everything. I didn't. I had to give up the place. And at the time, I think I slept in my car for like a week, and my parents didn't know about it, and I wasn't receiving a lot of support at the time. So I had a buddy of mine who worked at a strength and conditioning gym, and I just happened to be working out there. And also, I shot the breeze with him a few times, and I mentioned to him about my situation, and he's a great guy, one of my dearest friends. He's now the one of the head athletic trainers or strength and conditioning coaches out in a private school out in that they just built in California and South County. So anyway, his name is Josh, and he ended up at the time he owned a strength and conditioning gym, and he told me and said, "Hey, look, I know you're going to school, I know you're doing your thing, and I know you're always here and stuff like that. So I'll make you a deal. Like, if you can stay here, you can sleep on that couch right there if you want. In return, you can keep, if you want to keep the place up, like clean it up, when we close it up, or work here and just kind of man the place, during like certain shifts, basically work in exchange for board." And I said, "Great, when do I move in?" So I ended up living in a gym in the back room. There was a couch there. There was a microwave, bathroom. That was pretty much all I needed. And there was weights there. So I was literally living the fighter's life, the grappler's lifestyle, you know what I mean? In college, it was, don't get me wrong, it was challenging. There were times where, I couldn't, I didn't have enough money for food and whatnot, but I did the best I could. I lived off top ramen. I lived off, a lot of just hamburger helper, and to me, hamburger helper was a luxury. So I was living that lifestyle. But you know what? I didn't let it stop me though. I didn't let it stop me because I had a mission. I had a mission and I had a goal, and nobody was going to stop me. And I can't use my circumstances as an excuse. I can't use laziness as an excuse. I can't say my environment was an excuse. I'm thinking to myself, all right, if I can handle being hit by a car, and I can handle, this, having my heart broken, and I can handle getting a scholarship taken away from me, I can handle sleeping in the gym. I can handle going to practice. And for the record, my main source of transportation, the car I was driving at the time, it broke down and I didn't have a car. So I was fortunate that the gym was somewhat close to the campus, but it was hard. My buddy loaned me a bike, and he said, here's a bike. You can borrow it till you get your car fixed. And I didn't know when that was going to be. So I rode a bike to school. I rode a bike to Cal State Fullerton. And then I rode a bike from Fullerton all the way to Irvine, which is far. It was very far. And a lot of people didn't know that. I used to hide the bike behind the gym. I was embarrassed, but it is what it is. I went to practice, and I trained every day, and I still managed to compete and win those tournaments. And then sure enough, it got to a point where financially I couldn't afford to even pay for jiu-jitsu. It was that I was that like struggling for money, it was a struggle. So I went and I approached the coach, and I talked to my coach Mo, and I said, Coach, I love being here and whatnot, but it's like right now I can't afford to pay the tuition for the gym. So and he said, well, don't worry, we'll talk about it. We'll work it out. And sure enough, he ended up working out a deal with one of the gym managers. Shout out to Ron. I appreciate you, man. It means a lot. Ron Skolsdang. They ended up working together and deciding that I can clean the gym in exchange for tuition to get my membership paid for. And the moment he said, hey, look, you're going to start cleaning the gym, I said, when do I start? And he said, all right, I could do it tonight. So I started right then and there. I didn't waste time. And that was a big place. It was like 7,000 square feet. It was huge. I cleaned the ring. I cleaned the cage. I cleaned the men's and women's bathrooms. I vacuumed. I did, I cleaned everything. And it's like, if you want it, you're going to find a way. If not, you're going to find an excuse. So that's why when I hear like my kids or hear people say, oh, coach, I couldn't because this or that, or I got a hangnail or I'm, it's, come on, you can do it. It's like, show up. It's like, for me, it's like, I know what I wanted and nothing was going to stop me. And if this is what I had to do to get it done, I'm going to do it. The fact is, you figure it out and you just do it. And that's exactly what I had to do. I was on a mission, and I knew if I had to, and for the record, it took me like 2 hours to clean that gym. So practice ended at 8:30 and we had to wait till everyone left around 9 p.m. So I wouldn't leave there till sometimes midnight, but I wouldn't get home till like 1 a.m. because I started to ride my bike all the way home. So I would get to the gym sometimes at 12:30, 1 a.m. And I didn't care, I didn't care because I was saving money on the tuition. That was like that's an extra $120 20, 50 bucks in my pocket I could use to fix my car. And I ended up getting my car fixed.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, you find a way or you find an excuse, and we all have a choice. That has to be a decision that the athlete has to make. So they have an opportunity to do something special, or to be a part of something special, or to really make an impact in their life. And a lot of it's based on choice. A lot of it's based on, you know, okay, perspective. How am I going to see this challenge? Am I going to let it stop me and think, okay, well, I came this far, I got to stop? Or they're going to say, no, I'm here. Now, how am I going to get around this wall? Am I going to dig under it? I'm going to go around it. Am I going to jump it? Or am I going to like scale it? One way or another, I'm going to get through that wall.
Yeah.
So that's the attitude I think I always try to instill in my students, instill in my wrestlers, instill in my grapplers. Hey, look, you know, there's always a solution. You just have to adopt the right perspective and develop that problem solving attitude. You can always solve the problem. You can always find a solution. You know, if you're willing to find a solution. If you're looking for a reason to not do anything, you're going to find a reason. Yeah. But if you're looking for a reason to do something and figure it out and get it done, you're going to get it done.
Yeah, no, that is huge. And people that have that attitude typically succeed in their, you know, whatever it is that they're trying to do in life that lights their fire, they'll figure it out, you know, 100%. So, all right, man, let's fast forward a little bit and tell me about, you know, and we were talking beforehand, but, you know, you have your hybrid academy now. You have your own place that you've opened up, and
yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, Hybrid Academy, we've been open we've been open for about 2 months now. It's my new academy. It's a new jiu-jitsu academy. I'm very excited about it. It's always been a goal of mine. When I would say when I was about purple, I started to realize, wow, look, I can really do this. I want to do jiu-jitsu. I already made up my mind earlier than that, like about blue. I want to do this for the rest of my life. I want to be involved in jiu-jitsu just because it's done so much for me. So I opened up my own academy in the city of Anaheim, and we're called Hybrid Academy. And right now we just opened, we're 2 months old, and we're running gi, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gi, and no gi classes, and self-defense. We also just started adding boxing classes. I'm a huge fan of boxing, big fan of Mickey Ward and Gotti and De La Hoya and all the great ones. So we just started a boxing program, head up by my assistant coach, Coach Ebby. And so, yeah, we have an academy out there. We're running small group classes, and it's been great, man. It's been great because like now now I really feel like, you know, you're building your own little family, your own little small community. And it's really cool because, you know, we're running kids classes now, preschool classes, youth level, and adult jiu-jitsu. And it's really cool because like you're now taking something that made an impact in your life and you're sharing it with others, and you're letting it allow it to bless others. And that's what it's all about. I just want to bless people, and we're excited, man. Actually, we actually we're outgrowing our current spot right now. So I'm happy to say that we're going to be moving into a much more bigger facility within the next couple of months. So I'm pretty excited about that. So, but yeah, we started Hybrid Academy, going strong. And, we actually have our first jiu-jitsu competition because now California is opening up now. So they're now going to allow jiu-jitsu competitions now. And before COVID, California was a hotbed for jiu-jitsu and competitions. We hosted the Pans every year. We hosted the Worlds here. And we're going to open our first California tournament at Jiu-Jitsu World League at actually, where else? My alma mater, Cal State Fullerton. So we have 10 competitors that will be representing us. Very excited. I would say for about 95% of those students, it's going to be their first competition. So I'm excited to get them, to prep them, get them ready, and I'm just excited for the future overall. Hybrid Academy, we're gonna make an impact in our community, do great things. Yeah, in God, in Jesus' name.
Yeah, you guys are. You know, I mean, we kind of connected via social media a while back, and you know, right now you're putting out great content on social media for Hybrid Academy, showing technique, showing, I mean, how to do things, like you said, the process of it, right? And the principles behind the moves, you're showing those things. So for me, who is a technique nerd, a technique freak, I absolutely love those things. And not only all the life lessons and things that we have, but like I literally just like love the technique too. I get fired up about it. And
Me
so
too.
yeah. So you're putting out a lot of good stuff like that. But all right, brother, as we get ready to wrap this up, man, you know how I always like to end these things. So I'm going to ask you a question. You can answer all three or just one, expound upon it as much as you want. But tell me about a hero, a highlight, or a hardship in your life. Hero, highlight, or hardship.
Hero. I have two. Hero, Vince Silva. He taught me how to raise the bar, raise the standard in my life. Other hero, my little brother, Jason. I love him. The guy's been through a lot, and he's managed to be a champion and become an All-American for NAIA, and just become such an overall great man. And I'm very proud of him, and I love him. And I just wanted to know that. And hardship, the breaking of the leg, because I felt like even though my leg got broken and certain dreams got broken, as it repaired itself, that hardship was actually setting me up for success, which is now in jiu-jitsu. Yeah. And so it was definitely a negative turned into a positive. A highlight, what I would say was winning the Masters World Championships, because I lost. I competed prior to that. I competed in that tournament 2 years in a row, and every time I would get to the semifinals, I'd always lose. I'd always lose it. I'd always lose, and I got bronze those previous 2 years. And then on my third showing, I finally broke past the semifinals and ended up getting the title. And a lot of loved ones and very important people in my life were there to witness that. And it was an honor, and I was happy to have won and represent my team. And shout out to my coaches, Jiva Santana and Professor Mokayat. Thank you for your time and your effort that you put into me and everything you do for our team at One Jiu-Jitsu. We love you guys, and we're so happy that you guys are coming back stronger than ever.
Yeah, and that's the thing, man. You said it earlier, talking about, you're as strong as your team. You go as far as your team goes, and nobody achieves success alone, man. So having great coaches, great peers, teammates, people around you that support you, that's how you jump levels in your life, man. So I'm glad you shouted out your coaches and various people that impacted your life throughout this podcast, because sometimes people don't know. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they need reminders, and sometimes they don't know the positive impact that they made in our lives. And then when they hear it, man, it feels good to them. Sometimes they were just doing what was right at the time, and they don't realize how big of a deal it was in our lives, and then when they hear that, they're like, wow, they feel real good about themselves because of that. So I love that you're shouting those people out.
If I may say one more, I know I forgot one other person. Shout out to Miguel Gutierrez. Thank you so much. When I was in high school, you held me accountable. You helped me make grades. You drove me around to go to those tournaments, even with just you and me in the car. And you took me to all those tournaments, and you never gave up on me. Thank you, Miguel. You made a big impact in my life. You planted the seed that is wrestling in my life. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you, Coach Tim Byers, for everything you've done for me. Thank you.
Yeah. That's a blessing for those guys, man. I love that, and I respect that. So, because I really respect. Yeah. So, all right, brother. Hey, where can we follow you on social media?
You can follow me at RA140, Richard Arreola. Also, too, if you want to show some support to our Hybrid Academy, we'll be adding our new wrestling program soon in the next couple of months. You'll definitely be able to follow, and we'll be throwing out some pretty cool content for jiu-jitsu. We're at hybrid_HQ. That's where you can find our academy. Also, too, for wrestling technique, you can look under my brother, Jason Arreola. He's at Arreola _wrestling. That's Arreola _wrestling. He has some great techniques on slide bys and single legs. He's a great takedown artist. I encourage you to follow his page at Arreola Wrestling.
All right, cool. And I'll put that stuff in the show notes so people can jump on there, click on it, and follow. So it's been a blessing, man. Your story, well, not just your story, dude. You are an inspiration. You're a strong man of faith of God, and you are someone who I hope my athletes. You're the type of person I want my athletes and my own children to see in life and to look up to, man. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Coach Chad Parks. I appreciate you. And thank you so much for everything you do for your community and the wrestling community.
You bet, brother. All right, guys. Hey, this has been another episode of Coach P's Perspective. May God bless you, smile upon you, and give you peace. Till next time, we're out.